As the sun climbed above the wide ribbon of the Nile and painted the desert in gold and amber, the land of Nubia stirred with life, revealing a world where river, stone, and sky worked together to shape powerful kingdoms that thrived through skill, trade, and deep knowledge passed carefully from one generation to the next. Long before many people in distant lands could imagine great cities rising from dry earth, Nubian communities had already learned how to guide the river's seasonal floods, turning dark fertile soil into fields of grain, while villages clustered safely along the water like beads strung on a shining thread. The Nile did not simply flow through Nubia as a quiet river because it acted as a moving road, a source of food, and a storyteller that carried ideas, goods, and traditions north and south, linking Nubian lands to Egypt while still allowing them to grow in proudly independent ways. Children growing up in Nubian towns watched boats glide past with sails billowing like wings, and they learned early that the world was larger than their village, because traders brought copper tools, colorful beads, incense, and stories of distant places that sparked curiosity and ambition. Stone cities began to rise where the land narrowed and widened again, and places like Kerma became powerful centers filled with temples, workshops, and homes, all surrounded by thick walls that showed strength while protecting families, animals, and carefully stored harvests. Unlike many people who believed deserts were empty and useless, Nubians understood the rhythm of dry and wet seasons, using patience and clever planning to survive harsh conditions while turning challenges into opportunities that shaped resilient communities. Nubian leaders were not only warriors who commanded armies, because they were also organizers, judges, and guardians of tradition who balanced strength with wisdom, knowing that a kingdom survived best when people trusted those who ruled them. In royal ceremonies, drums echoed across the land while colorful garments shimmered in sunlight. And these moments reminded everyone that leadership was tied to ritual, responsibility, and respect for ancestors who had built the foundations of Nubian power. Gold glittered beneath Nubian soil, and skilled miners extracted it carefully, knowing its value reached far beyond their borders because Egyptian pharaohs and other rulers desired Nubian gold so greatly that it shaped centuries of trade and conflict. While some outsiders viewed Nubia only as a land of riches to be taken, Nubians themselves saw their home as a place of culture, language, and identity that deserved protection and pride rather than control by distant rulers. Artisans shaped pottery with steady hands, creating patterns that told stories of animals, gods, and daily life, while metalworkers forged tools and weapons that balanced beauty and usefulness in ways that impressed visiting traders. Families gathered in courtyards during cooler evenings, sharing meals of grain, vegetables, fish, and meat, while elders spoke of past kings, brave queens, and moments when the land had stood strong against invasion. Religion played an important role in Nubian life, but it blended local beliefs with ideas borrowed and adapted from neighbors, creating a spiritual world filled with gods who watched over rivers, mountains, fertility, and the journey of the soul after death. Sacred places were often built with careful alignment to the land, and temples rose near cliffs or river bends where people believed the divine felt closer, listening more carefully to prayers carried on wind and water. Nubian burials showed deep respect for the dead, as tombs were prepared with goods, jewelry, and symbols meant to guide loved ones into the next world, reflecting a belief that life continued beyond what the eyes could see. As Nubian kingdoms grew stronger, their armies trained with bows that became famous across ancient lands, because Nubian archers were so skilled that their reputation traveled far ahead of them like a warning written in the air. These warriors practiced from a young age, learning to judge distance, wind, and movement, and their discipline turned hunting skills into powerful military strength that protected cities and trade routes. Egyptian records often spoke of Nubia with a mixture of admiration and fear, because while Egypt saw itself as ancient and mighty, it could not ignore the strength, resources, and determination of its southern neighbor. At times, Egypt sent armies south, hoping to control Nubian lands, while at other moments Nubian rulers pushed north, reminding everyone that power along the Nile was never one-sided or simple. One remarkable chapter unfolded when Nubian kings from Kush ruled Egypt itself, wearing the double crown and governing as pharaohs while honoring both Nubian traditions and Egyptian customs with careful balance. These Kushite pharaohs repaired temples, supported priests, and ruled with a sense of responsibility that showed they understood the weight of history resting on their shoulders. Rather than erasing Egyptian culture, they added to it, blending art styles, religious practices, and ideas in ways that created a richer, more complex civilization along the Nile. Cities such as Nabata and later Meru became shining centers of learning and power, where scribes, priests, and merchants gathered under royal protection. Meru, surrounded by iron-rich land, grew especially strong through metalworking as furnaces burned day and night to produce tools, weapons, and trade goods that fueled economic growth. The skyline of Meru featured distinctive pyramids, smaller and steeper than those of Egypt, standing proudly as symbols of royal authority and cultural identity. Travelers approaching these cities saw not only monuments of stone, but also bustling markets filled with voices, colors, and movement that revealed a society alive with creativity and ambition. Women in Nubian society often held positions of respect and influence, and queens, sometimes known as kandakes, ruled or advised with authority that impressed and sometimes confused foreign observers. These powerful women commanded armies, negotiated with rivals, and made decisions that shaped the fate of kingdoms, showing that leadership in Nubia was not limited by simple rules of gender. Education mattered deeply, especially for those serving in temples or government, and knowledge of writing, mathematics, and astronomy helped maintain order and religious tradition. Merchants traveling from Central Africa, the Red Sea, and the Mediterranean passed through Nubian lands, making the region a crossroads where ideas mixed as freely as goods. Through these exchanges, Nubians learned about distant customs while sharing their own skills, turning trade into a powerful engine of cultural growth. Daily life balanced hard work with celebration, as farming, herding, and crafting filled the days, while festivals brought music, dance, and shared joy to communities. Children played games near the riverbanks, practiced archery with small bows, and listened closely to stories that taught courage, cleverness, and respect for elders. The natural world shaped Nubian imagination because animals like lions, cattle, and birds appeared in art and myth as symbols of strength, protection, and freedom. Despite their achievements, Nubian kingdoms faced challenges from shifting trade routes, environmental changes, and powerful neighbors who desired control. Adaptation became a survival skill as rulers adjusted alliances, moved capitals, and reshaped economies to meet changing conditions. Even when pressure from outside forces grew intense, Nubian identity remained strong, held together by shared history, language, and belief. Archaeologists today uncover temples, inscriptions, and everyday objects that reveal how complex and organized these societies truly were. Each discovery adds another piece to a story that was once overlooked or misunderstood by those who focused only on larger empires. Nubia was never a shadow of Egypt, but a dynamic civilization that influenced and challenged its neighbors in lasting ways. The rhythms of Nubian life followed the river's pulse, reminding everyone that survival depended on understanding nature rather than trying to overpower it. Music echoed through ceremonies and celebrations, using drums and horns to create sounds that carried emotion, memory, and meaning across generations. Clothing reflected both practicality and beauty, as lightweight fabrics protected from heat while jewelry displayed status, artistry, and personal pride. Homes were built with careful attention to climate, using materials that kept interiors cool while standing firm against wind and sand. Food traditions blended local crops with imported spices, turning meals into moments of connection and cultural expression. Religious festivals strengthened community bonds as people gathered to honor gods, ancestors, and the cycles of the year. Through all these layers of daily and royal life, Nubia developed a character that was confident, adaptable, and deeply rooted in place. Even as centuries passed and kingdoms rose and fell, the influence of Nubian culture continued to ripple outward along trade routes and memories. Stories of brave archers, wise queens, and golden cities traveled far beyond the Nile, shaping how others imagined Africa's ancient past. Modern scholars now work to restore Nubia to its rightful place in history, recognizing its achievements alongside those of better-known civilizations. Each temple stone and carved relief speaks quietly but firmly about a people who understood power, balance, and resilience. Nubian history reminds us that greatness does not belong to only one land or one story, but grows wherever people learn to adapt, cooperate, and dream. The desert winds that once brushed past pyramids and palaces still carry echoes of prayers, commands, and laughter from long ago. As we look back across thousands of years, Nubia stands as a powerful reminder that Africa's ancient kingdoms were builders of culture, not just witnesses to others' empires. Their story invites us to listen more carefully, to look beyond familiar names, and to appreciate the many paths human civilization has taken. In the glow of that understanding, the kingdoms of Nubia rise again in our imagination, strong, proud, and very much alive. As the Nile continued its long, patient journey northward beyond the scenes where part of Pa's life in Nubia unfolded with a steady confidence because generations of families had learned to read the river's moods, to plan when its waters receded, and to trust that their kingdoms endured not by chance, but by careful knowledge passed down through stories, songs, and daily work. In towns built near the river banks, children grew up watching boats glide across shimmering water, while elders explained how Nubian traders once traveled far beyond the horizon, exchanging gold, ivory, incense, and ideas with neighbors who slowly realized that Africa's southern kingdoms were not distant mysteries, but powerful partners. The cities of Nubia did not rise in silence because marketplaces echoed with bargaining voices, laughter, and the rhythmic sounds of craftsmen shaping stone metal and wood, all while the smell of cooking grain and roasting meat drifted through streets warmed by the sun. Kings and queens ruled from palaces that balanced strength with elegance, where thick walls protected families and treasures, yet painted rooms and carved pillars reminded visitors that power could be beautiful as well as firm. Among these rulers, Nubian queens, often called Kandakes, stood with remarkable authority, guiding armies, directing trade, and making decisions that shaped entire regions, while neighboring kingdoms slowly learned that leadership in Africa could wear both crowns and braided hair. When Nubian soldiers trained beneath open skies, they practiced with bows renowned across the ancient world because their skill with arrows was not simply learned but woven into childhood games, hunting traditions, and songs celebrating accuracy, patience, and calm focus. These warriors guarded borders not only with weapons, but with knowledge of desert paths, rocky hills, and river bends, ensuring that Nubia remained both protected and connected, rather than isolated or forgotten. Religion flowed through Nubian life like the Nile itself, since temples rose beside the river, filled with carvings that honored gods shared with Egypt as well as local spirits believed to guard land, water, and sky. Priests and priestesses led ceremonies that blended music, incense, and carefully spoken words, teaching children that the divine world was not distant but present in sunlight, fertile soil, and the steady return of the river's floods. Burial traditions revealed deep respect for ancestors because Nubian tombs were prepared with care, stocked with objects meant to serve the dead in the next life, reflecting a belief that life continued in new and meaningful forms. Unlike stories that place African kingdoms only in the shadows of others, Nubia's history shows constant exchange rather than imitation, since its people adapted ideas from Egypt and beyond while reshaping them to fit local values and environments. When Egyptian pharaohs looked south, they did not see emptiness, but a land of wealth and strong rulers, which sometimes led to peaceful alliances and at other times to fierce conflicts remembered in carvings and chronicles. During moments of conquest, Nubian culture did not vanish because languages, customs, and artistic styles survived, quietly shaping the region even when foreign rulers attempted to control it. In fact, there were times when Nubian kings ruled Egypt itself, forming the 25th dynasty, and during these years the Nile Valley experienced a blend of traditions that showed how deeply connected the two civilizations truly were. These Nubian pharaohs restored temples, respected ancient rituals, and ruled with a sense of responsibility that impressed later historians, even as political struggles eventually shifted power once more. Beyond Nubia, other African kingdoms flourished with equal creativity, including lands where ironworking transformed farming tools and weapons, allowing communities to grow stronger and more organized. Across wide savannas and forest edges, societies developed complex systems of trade, law, and storytelling, ensuring that history lived not only in stone but also in memory and spoken word. Griots and storytellers carried the past forward, teaching young listeners about heroic ancestors, wise leaders, and lessons learned from mistakes, all while weaving humor and rhythm into tales that never felt like dull lessons. These stories helped children understand that belonging to a kingdom meant more than living in one place because it involved shared responsibility, cooperation, and respect for elders and neighbors alike. While deserts separated some regions, trade routes stitched Africa together, allowing salt, gold, copper, and ideas to travel astonishing distances long before modern maps existed. Camels and donkeys carried goods slowly but steadily, guided by travelers who memorized stars, wines, and landmarks, turning the land itself into a living guidebook. Cities rose near crossroads of trade, where languages mixed, fashions blended, and new customs appeared, proving that ancient Africa was dynamic and curious rather than still or isolated. Children in these cities grew up hearing many accents, tasting unfamiliar foods, and learning that the world extended far beyond their own streets and fields. Education happened through doing, watching, and listening because skills like farming, metalworking, weaving, and leadership were taught side by side with moral lessons about fairness and courage. Art decorated everyday life, appearing on pottery, jewelry, walls, and clothing, often using bold patterns and symbols that carried meanings understood by the entire community. Music filled celebrations and ceremonies, with drums, clapping, and singing creating rhythms that brought people together, reminding them that unity was as important as strength. When droughts or floods challenged survival, communities relied on shared storage, planning, and mutual help, showing that cooperation was not just kind but necessary. These experiences shaped resilient societies able to recover, adapt, and continue, even when conditions grew harsh or unpredictable. As centuries passed, outside empires arrived with new ambitions, but African kingdoms did not simply disappear because traditions adjusted and identities endured beneath changing political surfaces. Even when names faded from foreign records, local memories preserved knowledge through rituals, languages, and customs practiced quietly but faithfully. Modern archaeologists now uncover temples, cities, and tools that confirm what oral traditions long preserved, revealing Africa's ancient past as rich, complex, and influential. For young learners today, these discoveries offer exciting proof that history includes many centers of innovation, not just the ones often mentioned first. Nubia and its neighbors shaped trade networks, political ideas, and cultural practices that reached far beyond their borders, influencing the ancient world in ways still being understood. Their achievements remind us that greatness does not require marble statues or endless written records, because creativity and wisdom appear wherever people engage thoughtfully with their environment. When children imagine ancient kingdoms, they can picture African cities bustling with life, leaders debating decisions, farmers tending fields, and traders setting out with hopeful determination. These images replace outdated myths with vibrant reality, helping history feel alive rather than distant. The story of Nubia teaches that Africa was not waiting to be discovered because it was already discovering itself, building systems, beliefs, and art that met its people's needs. By studying these kingdoms, we learn that civilization grows in many soils, shaped by rivers, climates, and shared human curiosity. The Nile connected Nubia to the wider world, but Nubian choices defined how that connection shaped their future. African kingdoms balanced tradition and change, holding on to identity while welcoming useful ideas from beyond their borders. This balance helped them survive longer than many realize, leaving traces that continue to influence culture today. Every carved stone, woven cloth, and retold story adds another layer to a history still being explored. When students read about ancient Africa, they're not filling gaps but opening doors to perspectives long overlooked. These kingdoms challenge the idea that history moves in a single line from one famous place to another. Instead, they show a web of civilizations growing side by side, learning, trading, and sometimes clashing, yet always shaping one another. Nubia stands as a reminder that leadership can look different while remaining powerful. Its queens prove that authority and wisdom know no single form. Its artists show that beauty does not require imitation. Its traders demonstrate that connection builds strength. Its farmers reveal that patience and planning sustain societies. Its storytellers teach that memory can be as durable as stone. When we follow these lessons, ancient Africa feels closer, clearer, and more inspiring. Rather than fading into the background, Nubia and other African kingdoms step forward as central characters in the human story. Their voices, once quieted by time, now speak again through research, education, and imagination. As this chapter closes, the river continues flowing, carrying with it echoes of kingdoms that shape their world with skill, courage, and creativity. And in that steady movement of water and memory, the legacy of Nubia and ancient African civilizations remains alive, inviting every new generation to look south, listen carefully, and understand that history has always been broader, richer, and more interconnected than it first appears.